Now, I'll go on. I'm probably spending too much time on these things. Okay, the posture you have to take for this journey that we're going to be dealing with today is, number one, we have to ask the Lord to help us with self-acceptance. Now, the reason I say help us, because I would have to say this, help me a lot. Okay? Did you ever notice that at the same time, do you have this? You're working to be accepted, you're hating parts of yourself. Is that true of anyone else? And you look at it, it can be any one of many, many things. And for Christians, it can often be the things about us that aren't in line with what we think are the expectations of people upon us. You got it? Does that make sense to you? Now, I'm going to say something that I'm pretty well convinced is true. Shame and self-judgment are huge barriers to entering mystery. Huge barriers. Shame and self-judgment. And I look back at part of myself, and do any of you do this? I look at things I've done, and I hate that I did those things. But I go beyond hating that I did them. I hate the part of me that was part of doing them. I am not gracious. I am not forgiving. I am not compassionate. I am not understanding. I am full of rejection. The journey to self-acceptance begins by laying down judgment and shame for the things we've done and taking a compassionate view of the things we've been about in the past. No matter what those things have been. Because Christ is much more compassionate and tolerant than we are. Have you ever just thought about the disciples that he gathered around him? Doubters, cynics, killers. One guy carries a sword and he wants to kill the guy that's with him that took all the money. There's all these different characters. And yet within a year and a half of being with Jesus, or less, he's handing them the keys to the car. He's given them amazing amounts of power and authority. What I had to come to recognize was I have almost all of those qualities in me. And I hate them and want to stamp them out. I repress them. I don't even want to remember that I've done it. But in doing that, I cut myself off from the journey to the true self. Now, so what we have to do is we have to recognize that self-awakening, as I said here, demands a new stance toward ourselves. And I use this acronym that comes from Siegel: curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love. Now, I believe that before the day's over, we'll get a little bit better picture, I'm hoping, of why we hate ourselves. How is this linked to core longings? How is this linked to the acceptance of others? But right now, I want you to, there has to be a different quality about ourselves. I was trying to remember really quickly, and I can't do it, who I read recently that made the comment. Boy, I can't remember who it was. But they essentially said that we should never make statements such as, I hate that thing about myself. Okay? Because it's an identity judgment, not a behavior judgment. And we have to learn. How do we show compassion to ourselves? How do we lay down the rock when everybody else has already been told by Christ to put theirs on the ground? See? And there are times everybody put theirs down. Christ put his down. He said, just go and sin no more. And I want to keep this rock in my hand just in case. That I need it for who? Not anybody out there, but I need it for somebody here. Let's go to the next one. After we've accepted self-acceptance, we have to move then to self-awareness. Self-awareness is simply coming to a place of saying to the Lord, give me a picture of how my small ego self operates in my life. I want to come to understand how I am trying to manage my world through this small ego self so that the true self can be awakened. Now, what I'm going to say is not going to be pleasant right now. It's too graphic of an image, but I'm going to go with it anyhow because I think it's important. I grew up in the woods. Not like raised by wolves, but I love to be out in the some have wondered. I'd love to be out in the woods. I still love to be out in the woods. I'm glad that, we live on a farm, and Cheryl go, it's cold out. I go, no, I got to get out there. So I've always been aware of certain things. There's been some things that have been interesting to me. Do you know that rabbits eat their young? if the young in the nest have been at all tampered with. You know how you go out on a farm, you find little nest, kids want to go and touch the rabbits, and then they say they put them back. Do you know that the mother rabbit will come and eat their young? But the mother rabbit eats the young to protect them. Not because they're angry at them, because it's their thought of this is the way I'm going to protect them. So I develop an aggressive posture to protect them. Do you know that coyotes eat their young? But coyotes eat their young for a total other process. They're hungry. And so one pack of coyotes will go looking for a mother that has a den with little coyotes in, and they'll go in and they'll rob the den, they'll eat all the coyotes. But their purpose of eating the coyotes is, I'm hungry and I don't care what it's going to take. Now, I've thought a lot about this lately, and it seems to be an image of the way, for me, my small ego self works. Part of my small ego self is active, trying to protect my true self, but in doing it is killing it. There's another kind of part of my true self that's actually trying to kill and devour, so there's no evidence of it whatsoever. So there's actually, I would say this, an aggressive and a more passive-aggressive approach to my small ego self dealing with my true self. And that I have to understand that and ask the Lord to help me become more aware. So watch how this works. First, what we have to say is, good, give me self-acceptance. Secondly, self-awareness. What is this true self, a false, small ego self like? How does it operate? Why do I do the things what's the way I do things so that the true self be awakened? But